65 million years ago, what is now our home state here in North Dakota had evolved into a large subtropical delta where dinosaurs like Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus battled to the death amid a lush environment of woodlands, swamps, and ponds. Yet here we are, 65 million years later, as North Dakotans, and we're benefiting mightily from our incredible jackpot of geology that was set in motion all those eons ago. Our spectacular geologic history led directly to the rich deposits that give us our abundant oil, abundant gas, and abundant coal resources, as well as our newest multi-billion-dollar jackpot, our vast, unrivaled underground CO2 storage capacity. And far, far more recently, Ice Age glacial deposits in central and eastern North Dakota created the nutrient-rich soils that support our enormous crop production and our vast pasture lands. In today's global uncertainty, our energy and food security make us the envy of many. Today, the state of our state is one of strength and infinite opportunity, blessed with abundant natural resources, inherent freedoms, and industrious, caring people. Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Governor Miller, distinguished members of the 68th Legislative Assembly, the majority and minority leaders, Chief Justice Jensen, and the justices of the Supreme Court, all my fellow elected leaders, the tribal leaders, the cabinet leaders, First Lady Catherine, Second Gentleman Craig, my family and friends that are here today. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks to the legislature for inviting us to speak. And thank you if you're online, over the airwaves, or in person. This morning we had an incredible opportunity to hear from Chief Justice Jensen and Chairman Jamie Azure from Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, and we're grateful to both of you for your thoughtful words this morning, for your dedicated service to all citizens of North Dakota, and Chairman Azure, for your courageous leadership of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. As we enter our 7th year of our administration and our 4th regular legislative session, Catherine and I remain deeply humbled and deeply honored to continue serving all the citizens of North Dakota. And we are very excited to welcome the 39th Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Dakota, Tammy Miller. Welcome, Tammy. We're also deeply grateful for the 6 years of dedicated service by Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford and his nearly a decade before that of leadership in Watford City. His positive impact on the lives of North Dakotans will be felt for generations to come. Please join me in thanking Brent and Sandy for their lifetime of service and wishing them all the best in the future. From the earliest indigenous inhabitants of these lands to the pioneers of modern agriculture, our success in North Dakota has always come from the strength and resiliency of our people. We're only 2 weeks since the official first day of winter, yet some cities like Bismarck have already received an entire season's worth of snowfall, over 51 inches, which is a record for the last 3 months of any year in history. This is on top of the April snow and ice storm that dropped 40 inches of snow across North Dakota and knocked out power to tens of thousands of residents coming right in the middle of spring calving, making it the 5th most costly disaster on record and the largest since the 2011 flooding. That April storm, the November Veterans Day storm, the mid-December blizzard, and then the whiteout conditions that stalled Christmas travel, North Dakotans have handled it all with grit and resiliency. And at the state level, we've seen incredible, round-the-clock, life-protecting efforts from our Department of Transportation snowplow drivers, Highway Patrol troopers, state radio dispatchers, and the Department of Emergency Services personnel. Our NDDOT had over 350 snowplow operators working across our expansive state to clear 8,500 road miles after last April's storm event. In the harshest conditions, these operators may be found leading the way so rural volunteer ambulances and first responders can reach those in the need of help. With us today, representing those dedicated state team members, we have Michelle Fender-Nagel, who serves as a snowplow operator in NDDOT's Valley City East section. Michelle, we're grateful for you, for your courage, your skill, and your determination, not just through these last 12 months of storms, but for your 34 years of service, keeping North Dakotans safe and keeping our economy going. Please join me in thanking Michelle and all of our state and local plow operators. Michelle, please stand. I've had a chance to do a ride-along in a snowplow, and I'm telling you, the ones we have on the road today are, the dashboard looks more like an aircraft than it does a truck that I drove growing up. So anyway, thank you, Michelle. You may also recall how we got into this winter with our first powerful winter storm that began on November 9th. As darkness fell across our state, temperatures dropped, and a dangerous freezing rain coated I-94. North Dakota Highway Patrol Trooper Alex Breitbach was driving east that evening, just past Jamestown, when he observed a semi-truck jackknifed across the westbound lanes, nearly blocking the entire road. He quickly turned around in the median, flipped on his emergency lights to warn other traffic. As he approached the semi to check on the driver, Trooper Breitbach astutely heard another truck coming behind him. He quickly jumped over the median cable barrier, watched as a semi-truck smashed into a squad car. But it wasn't over. During the next several minutes, 7 additional crashes involving 18 vehicles occurred at that same location before any additional responders could arrive on the scene. Through it all, Trooper Breitbach went from vehicle to vehicle, putting himself in great danger as he checked on crash victims, directed them to safety if they could, and incredibly, no lives were lost and no one was seriously hurt. This is just one single example of the types of incidents that North Dakota's finest, our North Dakota Highway Patrol, and all of our other first responders experience every day, risking their lives to help and protect others. Trooper Breitbach, who is here with us today, all of our first responders, we say thank you for your service and your bravery. Right over here. Give us a wave, Trooper. How about a bigger wave? There we go. Thank you. The unprecedented start to the winter season has strained resources at every level of government. This historic weather calls for prompt action. With the sponsorship of Senator Terry Wanzik and Representative Mike Brandenburg, we can expedite $20 million in emergency snow removal grants to be awarded to state, local, and tribal governments who have already exceeded their average snowfall removal budgets for the entire year. As state leaders, we have an opportunity to act quickly to relieve the pressures on communities across the state. Let's make this relief bill one of the first bills to reach my desk. Our citizens also endured a year of near-record inflation that put a strain on household budgets, with higher prices on everything from eggs and flour to gasoline and automobiles. We're grateful to this legislature for passing a historic bonding bill in 2021 that allowed us to avoid inflation and take advantage of lower interest rates and construction costs, thereby saving tens of millions in taxpayer dollars while building roads, bridges, water, and other critical infrastructure. We've made great progress on DOT's 10-year infrastructure plan, investing $318 million so far this biennium to rebuild aging roads and bridges. And our executive budget, which we proposed last month, has an unprecedented $2.4 billion to accelerate that work. We can also build on our work done in water infrastructure last session by investing over $600 million to advance flood protection and regional and critical water supply infrastructure across the state. And we do continue to make strides towards our goal of being the first state in the nation to reach 100% of our citizens with fast, reliable broadband. Of the funds allocated from the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act for broadband projects, there are projects proposed to install 1,100 more miles of fiber connecting the last 2,150 underserved and unserved addresses across the state. Having smart, efficient infrastructure and healthy, vibrant communities and a stable tax and regulatory environment are key to attracting capital and talent to North Dakota. And boy, have we been doing that. In less than the last 2 years, we've had over $1 billion of private sector investments just in new soybean processing plants announced for North Dakota. Remarkably, these 3 processing plants will have the capacity to process roughly 75% of our state's current annual soybean production, adding value to this key commodity and creating new and closer markets for our farmers. Increased global demand for sustainable biofuels in agriculture, transportation, and in sustainable aviation represents a huge growth opportunity for North Dakota and expanded opportunities for collaboration between our 2 largest industries, ag and energy. In case you were still shoveling out when the word came in, we received some very fun news just before Christmas. Our state's population, you're part of this record, hit an estimated all-time high, 779,261 residents as of July 1, 2026. This rebounded from the slight dip that we saw in 2021. And this slight bump up from our previous record in 2020 census count can be attributed to a lot of little bumps of the baby kind. North Dakota had 2,800 more births than deaths in the last 12 months, and the number of births was up over the previous year. In fact, only Utah has a higher rate of births per capita than North Dakota. Our record population speaks to the abundant opportunities and exceptional quality of life we enjoy in North Dakota. The 106,000 residents that we've added since 2010 is the equivalent of adding another Grand Forks and another Minot. Yeah. We know Randy liked that. But for the rest of you, if it's too difficult to imagine a whole nother Minot or a whole nother Grand Forks, for some of you Class B folks, just think of it as adding 328 more Arthurs. Okay? We do remain one of the nation's fastest growing states. We're up 16% since 2010. That's faster than all but 6 other states. Turning to the future, we're faced with unprecedented opportunities to improve the lives of North Dakotans. This legislature has a historic opportunity to diversify our economy, invest in infrastructure, build healthy, vibrant communities, support research and innovation, transform education at both K-12 and higher ed, improve government services, create tourism destinations, and address our urgent workforce needs. Together, we begin this journey from a position of strength. Our combined reserves are the highest in state history. Our general fund revenues are running 23% or $700 million ahead of forecast. Our oil tax revenues are running 60% or over $1.5 billion ahead of forecast. We have the nation's second lowest unemployment rate at 2.3%, behind only Utah. Our 3 largest cities, Bismarck, Fargo, and Grand Forks, were among the top 5 metropolitan areas in the entire nation for having the lowest unemployment rates in the month of October. Now is the time for strategic investment in our state's future. North Dakota continues to successfully engage on an all-of-the-above approach that harnesses our oil, our gas, our coal, our hydroelectric, renewable fuels, wind, and solar. On a per capita basis, only Wyoming produces more energy than we do in North Dakota. Yet tapping these abundant resources, creating jobs, transforming our communities, our state, and our nation, it only happens when risk takers, entrepreneurs, and innovators invest their capital and their talent in our state. Entrepreneurs like Harold Ham, who grew up the 13th child of sharecroppers in rural Oklahoma and founded Continental Resources in 1967 when he was just 21 years old. Harold and Continental helped lead the horizontal drilling revolution. They started that over 25 years ago. It was a game changer that unlocked for us in our state, in our tribal, vast shale oil reserves. It changed the course of the economy of our state, and it changed the course of our country. Harold is widely recognized as the person who led the charge to lift America's 40-year ban on exporting U.S. crude oil in 2015. Getting this archaic federal ban lifted benefited every Bakken producer, every mineral owner, every North Dakota Western community, including it also helped the significant mineral acreages owned by the state of North Dakota trust lands for our schools and universities. The oil and gas industry employs thousands of North Dakotans and has produced billions of dollars in tax revenue that support the state, the tribes, nations, counties, cities, townships, school districts, hospitals, parks, airports through a variety of funds created by this legislature. And it's also funded 100% of our $8 billion legacy fund and most of our $5.7 billion Common Schools Trust Fund, which will have provided, at the end of this biennium, $1.8 billion to K-12 public schools in property tax relief in the decade ending 2025. Selling more of our clean U.S. energy to our friends and allies versus forcing them to buy dirty energy from our adversaries is the single most powerful change the U.S. could make today to drive American strength up and enhance global stability. And through their operations in North Dakota since 2003, Continental has themselves invested billions of dollars of private capital towards U.S. energy independence, and they help create what we and the world now know as the Bakken. We're deeply grateful for the investments by Harold and Continental and all the other industry leaders in North Dakota who have underpinned our current prosperity and who helped ensure a secure energy future for our nation and for our allies. We're deeply honored to have Harold Ham here in person today, representing the incredible positive impact that he, Continental Resources, and the entire North Dakota oil and gas industry have had on every single North Dakotan. We thank you, Harold, your family, and the entire Continental team. Ladies and gentlemen, Harold Ham. Providing a viable path forward for coal has been a priority of this body in our state, and we were thrilled to provide assistance to the sale of Coal Creek Station to Rainbow Energy Center last year. It was a victory not only for the hundreds of workers at Coal Creek and Falkirk Mine and the entire region, but for every North Dakotan who expects the lights to turn on and the heat to come on when they flip the switch and turn up the thermostat. It was also a victory for U.S. energy security, national security, and grid reliability. And it wouldn't have happened without people, some of whom are here today. Lauren Kopsing, Stacy Scheider, Al Christensen, Brent Sanford, the Industrial Commission, and all the other local and federal officials, including the legislature, who all fought tooth and nail to keep Coal Creek. The North Dakota lignite coal industry provides affordable, reliable baseload electricity and keeps the lights and heat on during bitter cold like we've seen. Let's get all of them a hand, including yourselves, for saving Coal Creek. Way to go, legislature. Way to go, Lauren and team. Way to go, Rainbow. Our bedrock industry, agriculture, continues to lead the nation in many categories. We rank first in the production of spring wheat, durum wheat, canola, flaxseed, all dry edible beans, pinto beans, dry edible peas, and my favorite, honey. We rank second in rye, sunflowers, and lentils, third in sugar beets, oats, and barley, and in the top dozen for states of corn, soybeans, potatoes, and chickpeas. Our farmers and ranchers battle every day to provide food security for our state, our country, and the world. They fight through challenging weather, through droughts and fires, blizzards and floods. They innovate, and they expand the use of technology to boost yields, and they're implementing resilient and regenerative farming and grazing practices. And they work through the burdensome red tape pushed down from the federal government. These farm and ranch families are the backbone of our rural state, and the work they do is feeding the growing world, and for that, we should all be grateful. Let's give it up for all of our North Dakota farmers and ranchers. But despite their unwavering dedication and leading in so many of these crops, including a growing abundance of feed for livestock from our many new value-added ag processing projects, North Dakota, we stack up way short when we compare our animal agriculture output to our neighboring states. For example, we're 23rd in cattle and calves on feed. South Dakota's 7th, Minnesota's on 8th. We're 35th in milk cows. Minnesota's 7th. We're 24th in hogs and pigs. Minnesota is 2nd. South Dakota's 10th. Consider this. North Dakota's record year for cattle and calves was 1975. 2.6 million head, less than 1.9 million today. Our record year for dairy cows, 1934, when we had 701,000 cows. Now we have only 15,000 dairy cows left in North Dakota. We import milk into North Dakota for our school programs. Hogs peaked in 1943 at just over 1.1 million. Now we're down to 150,000, or about a tenth of that. We must ask ourselves, when we're so good at agriculture, what do other states have that we don't? Let's take a look at just right next door, like South Dakota. In their family farming laws, they've got carve-outs that smartly allow non-related parties to pool capital for animal agricultural operations like feeding livestock and poultry, operating a dairy farm for pork production. Here in America's heartland, we love our freedom. But when it comes to making business decisions in North Dakota, apparently that freedom applies to everyone in every industry except for our farmers and ranchers. It's time to change that. We know that our farmers and ranchers can compete with anyone, anywhere, anytime, if they're given a level playing field. Right now, the field is so uneven when it comes to capital access and capital formation. We can level it, and we can do it wisely and with smart environmental stewardship. Plus, the economics of animal agriculture increase land values and help rural communities to grow and thrive. I urge this body to change this long downward trajectory of animal agriculture in North Dakota, and let's do away with the archaic law as it applies to ownership of animal agriculture operations, including poultry. Let's take the handcuffs off our ranchers and livestock producers. Let's allow animal agriculture to flourish in North Dakota once again. We need farm freedom legislation, and we need it now. Just as we are leaders in ag and energy, North Dakota can lead the nation in carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and reshape energy policy for this country. Today, we're on our way towards achieving carbon neutrality as a state by 2030, thanks to our extraordinary capacity to safely store over 252 billion tons of CO2, or 50 years of the nation's CO2 output. In the process, most importantly, we can help secure the future of our state's two largest industries, energy, and that includes coal, and agriculture. We were the first state to establish the legal and regulatory framework for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or CCUS, way back in 2009, the first state. Now we're in a spot to lead the nation in this emerging industry because we can permit our own CO2 storage wells at least 5 times faster than the EPA. Wyoming is the only other state in the nation that has the authority to permit a CO2 well. We will also allow landowners to get paid for their underground pore space if a supermajority agrees to it, thanks to legislation passed by this legislature. And finally, this legislature also smartly implemented long-term liability protections for the companies who will pay into a fund that the state can use to monitor the wells long-term. So we've solved primacy, we've solved pooling, and we've solved the liability protection. We're the only state to have done all three of those, the trifecta. And because of this foundation, we already are the nation's CCUS proving ground. In July, Red Trail Energy, the ethanol plant near Richardson, became the first working Class 6 CO2 storage well in the nation, now safely capturing and storing over 500 metric tons of CO2 per day. We have several other projects in the queue that will capture over 20 million tons of CO2 by 2026. So if you support our ag and ethanol industry, which I know you do, and if you support our oil and gas industry, which I know you do, and if you support our coal industry, which I know you do, you should absolutely continue the support that this legislator has given to CCUS. But don't take my word for it, take your own. We're one of the only states in the nation where the legislature has actually written its support for carbon storage into state law. Chapter 38-22-1 reads, quote, "It is in the public interest to promote the geologic storage of carbon dioxide. Doing so will benefit the state and the global environment by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Doing so will help ensure the viability of our state's coal and power industries and to the economic benefit of North Dakota and its citizens. Further, geologic storage of carbon dioxide, a potentially valuable commodity, may allow for its ready availability, if needed, for the commercial, industrial, or other uses, including enhanced recovery of oil, gas, and other minerals," end quote. That's right out of state law. And the infrastructure that is being built for moving CO2 in the future can be utilized for moving CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, or EOR, which is injecting carbon into rock and shale formations to draw out more oil. One North Dakota company has led the way on EOR for decades. Since October 2000, Dakota Gasification Company, a subsidiary of Basin Electric Power Cooperative, has been safely capturing and transporting CO2. Not a little, a lot, over 40 million tons of it, and it's been transported from here to Weyburn, Saskatchewan for enhanced oil recovery in the Canadian oil fields. Let me repeat that. We've had a CO2 pipeline 205 miles long operating safely in western North Dakota for over 20 years. In enhanced oil recovery, by putting more CO2 down hole than is produced when the barrel of oil comes up, you can create a carbon negative barrel of oil. That's transformative for liquid fuels, transportation fuels. It's transformative for North Dakota. This year in North Dakota, carbon negative oil production was achieved by Denbury Resources in Bowman County in some 1980s wells, revitalizing those wells. Denbury is a trailblazer in enhanced oil recovery. They're using CO2 that's piped in from Wyoming. EERC, our own Energy and Environmental Research Center, estimates North Dakota could potentially produce between 5 and 7 billion with a B, barrels of carbon negative oil using CO2 for enhanced oil recovery. New federal incentives for storing CO2 or using it for EOR will drive billions of dollars towards the bottom line of our ag, coal, oil, and gas industries. This, combined with our vast storage capacity and our forward-looking policies, is why we have billions of dollars of value-added energy and value-added ag projects knocking on our door in North Dakota right now. Our state has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in oil and gas tax revenue back into the development of CCUS technologies for over a decade. And we continue to increase that investment through programs like the Clean Sustainable Energy Authority, which was smartly created by North Dakota legislature in the 2021 Assembly. As North Dakotans in the energy industry are reinvesting in innovation, the Biden administration is trying to live up to its best to the president's campaign guarantee that he will end fossil fuel. The federal administration, from defying federal law by refusing to hold oil and gas leases on federal lands, threatening oil and gas companies with new taxes on excess profits, bogus lawsuits, sue and settle, which are destroying the rights of private landowners in North Dakota. All of these things fly in the face of free market economics. Our current federal energy policy is driving up inflation empowering foreign dictators, literally enabling wars, weakening our economy, threatening the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. And on top of all that, it's actually bad for the environment because no one produces energy cleaner and safer than we do here in the United States and in North Dakota. In North Dakota, we do know better. And that's why we've proposed investing $500 million between this biennium and next to capitalize the Clean Sustainable Energy Loan Fund. With this infusion, along with $50 million for grants through the fund, it'll support clean energy projects such as CCUS, which represents a path forward for baseload power through innovation over regulation. We saw it with the saving of Coal Creek Station, thanks to future carbon capture component of that project. And we will continue to strongly support what will be our largest demonstration of carbon capture at Minn Kota Power Cooperative's Milton R. Young Station near Center. And in addition, Continental Resources this past year also committed $250 million to the Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline, which will capture CO2 and enhance the economics of over 30 ethanol plants and their farmer customers across 5 states. Today, we're pleased to have with us the visionary leaders of these businesses showing us the way on how these projects are going to define the future, but they're working today in North Dakota. So we're going to congratulate them all at a time, but we've got Red Trail Energy CEO Gerald Bachmeyer, Basin Electric CEO and General Manager Todd Talese, Denbury CEO Chris Kendall, and I also want to recognize Minn Kota President CEO Mac McClinnan, who wasn't able to make it due to the weather, but let's have those 4 CEOs please stand up. Thank you for all you're doing to invent the future. I've talked about our 2 big economic sectors, ag and energy, but now let's look at another one of our top industries and one that's critical to workforce, and that's tourism and recreation. We need to expand our existing tourism offerings and sharpen our focus on developing destinations, those unique attractions and amenities that really drive visitors and potential new residents and workers to our state. As we announced last month, our budget includes more than $51 million to improve and expand our state parks and recreational sites, including a new campground at the Pembina Gorge, planning for upgrades at beautiful Lake Metagoshi, and new cabins at state parks across our state. We're also proposing a $50 million destination development fund to be matched by private or non-state sources to build or expand unique attractions. We have asked ourselves for generations, how do we keep our young people here? Well, part of the answer is creating vibrant communities, attractions, and recreations. Young people and young families are looking for places to live based on the amenities in those communities and that region. When we leverage public dollars to drive private investment, amazing things can happen. And they're happening right now with the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. The history-making, catalytic, $50 million endowment approved in this room by the 2019 legislature has already been leveraged to drive over $100 million in private investment into our state. In 1883, Theodore Roosevelt first arrived in the Badlands. 120 years later, starting in around 2003, there was another individual who arrived in North Dakota whose grit, resilience, hard work, and determination has changed North Dakota and our nation. And we've already recognized him today, and that's Mr. Harold Hamm. Harold is in the arena for North Dakota, our nation's energy independence, and he's in the arena for making America stronger on the world stage. And so, it's incredibly fitting and a deep honor, and with the deepest gratitude, that here today, in these chambers, where the TR Library endowment idea was first brought to life, that I've got the honor to make the public announcement for the very first time that Harold Hamm has completed a gift of $50 million to the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Foundation. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Harold. This is a game-changing gift that I know will inspire donors across our state and across our nation as they come to understand that this is not a building, but it's going to be a world-class, state-of-the-art interactive facility. And the vision here is one to really build a lasting, built to last, an institution that share Roosevelt's principles on leadership, citizenship, and conservation. And we know that our nation needs those lessons now more than ever. With this momentum, we have a golden opportunity, working in partnership with the National Park Service, to reimagine what is already our state's most visited place. You've probably been there, the Painted Canyon Visitor Center. If you've been there, you probably know that it was built in the 1960s, and this outdated cinder block rest stop operated and run on National Park Service land looks a lot like my grade school in Arthur. It does have going for it, it does have a coyote skull and a raccoon skin inside. And it's also open 6 months a year. That was not always the case. When the interstate first opened, 1972, it was open year-round. There was over 1 million visitors that stopped at that beautiful overlook. We have in our budget a vision for a Painted Canyon Visitor Center that will inspire visitors of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park to learn more about why only one of the 63 national parks is named after a person versus a place, and how TR's vision for national parks was for the benefit and the enjoyment of the American people. And as partners in this project with the National Park Service and the National Park Foundation, North Dakota will have an opportunity to tell the North Dakota story to the millions of visitors stopping to enjoy one of the most spectacular, unspoiled views in America. And when telling the North Dakota story, it cannot be done without highlighting our military members. And that includes across our state and across our tribes. Including in the executive budget is a public-private military museum right here in the Capitol grounds, envisioned to be connected to the beautiful Heritage Center, which this body has supported. The inspirational service and sacrifice of our military members is deserving of a peaceful setting where current and future generations of North Dakotans can learn more about and reflect upon the incredible legacy of those men and women in uniform. Men like Woody Keeble, who's in our Rough Rider Hall of Fame downstairs, who served in 2 wars and won a Medal of Honor. Incredible story, and also he's over in our National Hall of Honor, Tribal Hall of Honor at the Heritage Center. It's fitting that the North Dakota National Guard and our great Adjutant General Dorman is leading these efforts for the North Dakota Military Museum. In 1998, just 9 years after the North Dakota became a state, 8 companies of the 1st North Dakota Infantry Regiment volunteered for duty during the Spanish-American War and the Philippine insurrection. Among them, 9 soldiers from the 1st North Dakota Volunteers earned medals of honor for their actions at San Miguel and San Isidro, where 25 scouts crossed a burning bridge to rout more than 600 insurgents entrenched on the opposite shore. North Dakotans need to know these stories, and North Dakotan, with immense pride in the heroism its National Guard Regiment adopted as its state flag, the state flag we have today, the image of the regimental flag carried by those 1st North Dakota Infantry in the Philippines. North Dakota citizens have served honorably in every conflict and in every call where our nation has asked for their help, including members of our tribal nations who serve at a higher rate than any other group in the country. Their actions, accomplishments, the uniforms they wore, the equipment they operated, the planes they flew, the ships they sailed, the sacrifices of life and limb in the defense of our state and nation, these are all the threads in the fabric that has made North Dakota legendary. The North Dakota Military Museum would preserve the incredible history and legacy of our legendary servicemen and women, and it deserves our support. Would those who have served or are currently serving in the military or members of Gold Star families please stand to receive our gratitude for your service. In addition to tourism and other top industries, we're working every way to diversify our economy and make it less resilient on commodity markets. Our status as the nation's proving ground for unmanned aircraft systems continues to grow. I'm excited to announce, and this is a very big deal, the Federal Aviation Administration granted initial approval to allow one of our private sector partners to fly a drone beyond visual line of sight using Vantas, our first of its kind air traffic control network for UAS operators. This approval is a critical step that validates our state's investment and years of work to bring UAS aircraft to commercial sectors in a safe and economic way. Others, yeah, go ahead and cheer for that. There's a saying in technology that benefits accrue to the leader. And now we're going to see that. Other states are reaching out to us as a leader in this technology. To build on this momentum, our budget proposes a $30 million investment in Vantas, $7 million for the Grand Sky UAS Business and Aviation Park in Grand Forks. Let's keep that going, and we're going to see real benefits for our state and nation. Just as we compete with other states in business sectors like ag, energy, and tourism, our communities must also compete with other cities across the country for workforce. To help make our state communities even more attractive places to live, we proposed our Energize Our Communities plan to help cities attract new residents and help and retain our youth and existing workforce. These investments include $40 million to support more affordable, available housing and promote infill developments, especially in blighted and rural areas. We know that attracting workforce to North Dakota requires communities with assets that meet the needs and wants of future residents. The Renaissance Zone was created by this legislature over 23 years ago, and it has been the most successful program in state history for reducing overall property taxes. How does it do that? It incentivizes smart, efficient use of existing infrastructure, and it is utilized by over 60 communities of all sizes statewide. After 23 years of success, it's time for us to refresh this program with Renaissance Zone 2.0 legislation. On behalf of all these North Dakota communities who are fighting for workforce, I'm calling on this assembly to bring forward legislation to reinvigorate the Renaissance Zone program by allowing additional flexibility and re-entry into the program, and to reduce red tape and barriers to having projects approved. This matters because incentivizing the full utilization of the existing infrastructure versus subsidizing brand new, expensive, and non-economic greenfield edge infrastructure with state dollars, utilizing existing infrastructure is the true path towards reducing property taxes and municipal water bill burdens. Keeping our communities safe should also be a priority. And we know that law enforcement agencies are working at every level to do just that. We can show our support for them, and that North Dakota, unlike other states and other cities, truly does back the blue. By providing a $5 million fund for matching grants for law enforcement agencies that they can use to drive workforce recruitment and retention strategies and provide much needed equipment to protect those officers who put themselves in harm's way to protect us all. And when we ask our law enforcement to put themselves in harm's way, we must always stand behind them. Unfortunately, currently that's not always the case. Current state law requires that an officer serve within the state of North Dakota for 5 years before they can be considered for a workers' compensation claim through WSI if a compensable work injury is not proven. If not, the presumption is that it was a pre-existing condition that caused the injury. This needs to change, and it needs to change today, especially when we have every law enforcement agency in our state with positions open, trying to recruit people to come here from other states that aren't supporting the blue. So we need, in North Dakota, every prospective officer across the country needs to know that if they come here and if you serve in North Dakota, whether it's 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years, we will stand behind you, your family, and your brothers and sisters in uniform. Let's get it done. And just so our highway patrol knows, we're also supporting those in brown too, not just the blue. We're going to make sure we're... Just as we support our men and women in blue and brown, North Dakota support our educators, whether at public schools, private schools, or at home school. The men and women who dedicate themselves to educating our youth are heroes. And they do this not for fame and glory. They do it to make a positive impact on the lives of their students. Right now, for anyone that has been a teacher or is a teacher in the room, there's many of them here, but join me in thanking all of our educating heroes across the state. These past 6 years, these educators have helped North Dakota make significant progress in education policy, whether it's the innovation waiver that allows local school boards to redesign the school experience, or the Learn Everywhere policy that allows students to earn credits outside the school walls, or North Dakota being the only state in the nation with the learning continuum, better known as the graduation pathway, available for all public schools. North Dakota has created layers of flexibility that allow our public system to determine the most effective ways to support a student-centered learning environment. Now we need to figure out how to incentivize school districts to adopt what all of you have created. Our students need every school district to take advantage of these transformative opportunities. The door on how each district and each school can innovate is wide open. And together, parents, teachers, superintendents, school board leaders are empowered to step up and make it happen. While flexibilities exist for public schools to approach school differently, students and parents still may not have some of the choices they want or need to match the best learning environment to the individual needs of the learner. We intend to partner with all interested legislators, including Representative Michelle Strinden, to explore opportunities to expand parental choice options, whether it be through virtual school choice, public-to-public enrollment flexibilities, or allowing students greater autonomy to engage with the Center for Distance Education. Parents and students need to be at the table for discussions on connecting the learner with the instructional environment or approach that best fits that person and that family. In addition to ensuring our students have a solid foundation for life, we must also address our workforce challenges. And our institutions of higher education are key pieces to this puzzle. As our nation and state enrollment trends for higher ed decrease, it's vital that we provide our institutions with the resources and the flexibility to respond to workforce needs more rapidly. We urge the legislature to advance the proposed $10 million Innovation Workforce Grant to higher ed, provide the resources necessary for them to quickly respond with programs to respond to the private sector workforce needs. Our research universities are also teaming up with 11 universities in 5 states on the Regional Technology and Innovation Alliance. Our administration will work with this alliance and with our regional governors to ensure we succeed in the pursuit of large federal research grants to advance the next generation of technology and reduce our nation's reliance on foreign adversaries for such critical technology as microchips. Through the First Lady's courageous leadership in openly sharing her story of her long battle with the disease of addiction and her nearly 21 years of recovery, she has inspired thousands of others that are still trapped in the disease of addiction, and she's inspired their loved ones as well, that the dream and the hope of recovery exists for all that act. Since 2017, with passion and dedication, she's focused on the mission of Recovery Reinvented around ending the shame and stigma of this chronic brain disease. By eliminating the shame and stigma, we remove the social barriers that prevent people from reaching out for help and accessing vital treatment and recovery resources. With courage and passion, she's leading a movement that's changing the narrative, changing the policies, and changing the approaches of how health systems are dealing with the disease of addiction. The health crisis of addiction is still gripping our nation. Last year, over 107,000 people died of overdoses in our country. But right now, let's focus on someone who's making a difference. So if you know anyone who's been affected by the disease of addiction in your company, your family, your neighborhood, your friends, your workplace, please stand and join me in thanking our incredible First Lady, Catherine Helgus Burgum. You may not all know that I'm married to an introvert, and that was her worst moment of the year right there. She hates when that happens, the tension. But anyway, you're making a big difference. Sometimes you have to get the little applause that goes with it. But critical to supporting individual disease addiction are something that came out of the work of our North Dakota behavioral health team and Recovery Reinvented, and that was when we were faced with this incredible shortage even 6 years ago of addiction counselors in our state. And we were one of the first states to come up with the idea of licensing peer support specialists. And these are individuals who use their lived experience, they get training, and then they get qualified and certified, and they assist others on their journey to recovery and wellness. Starting from zero, we now have currently 819 trained peer support specialists across our state. One of them is here with us today and has an incredible story of how she was able to transform her life and is now helping others to do the same. Not only is she a mother in long-term recovery, but she's also overcome an uphill battle, rebuilding her life after many years of substance abuse, interaction with the criminal justice system that led to felony records, fighting for her legal right to parent her children again. She said, "To me, recovery means I can wake up and know that I have surrounded not only my children but myself with positivity, with love, health, and stability, and that I can support others in reaching their recovery goals too." Her incredible story of resilience and recovery is one of many. This individual is currently working as the peer support administrator for the Behavioral Health Division at North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. Let's celebrate her inspiring journey and the continued passion of all 918 peer support specialists who are transforming and saving lives across North Dakota. Christy Johnson, please stand so we can recognize you and your important work. We continue to prioritize tribal engagement with the 5 sovereign tribal nations with whom we share geography as one of our 5 strategic initiatives. In June, we signed an agreement between the North Dakota Highway Patrol and Spirit Lake Nation, similar to the existing agreement that's already in place with MHA Nation. These agreements enhance emergency response by allowing the closest available peace officer to respond to an emergency call for service until the agency with primary jurisdiction arrives and assumes the lead. When someone in distress calls 911, they should never have to worry what the response time to their emergency will be or will depend on whether they're a tribal member or not. We are all citizens of North Dakota, including every tribal enrolled member. And in this state, neighbors look out for each other. And I think of that, can we go back to that last photo? I just want to be clear because that's Spirit Lake Chairman Doug Yankton. We've now got to clarify so we don't get confused. So that he's Big Doug and I'm Little Doug, so Chairman Big Doug. I had the great honor this last year, Minnewacan Four Winds won the state Class B championship undefeated, one of the greatest teams in the history of the state. Had the whole group over to the governor's residence to host them. And Chairman Yankton's son was the MVP. So anyway, congratulations to that team. Great work. The 5th Strengthening Government-to-Government Partnerships and Relationship Conference will take place June 21st and 22nd at the Bismarck Event Center. You're all invited. While collaborations with our tribal neighbors has never been stronger, as Chairman Azure said this morning, there's still much work to be done. We've come to all of this work in a good way with an open heart and respect for the resiliency of our tribal neighbors who are often remain entangled in a very broken federal system, systems, plural, especially as it relates to healthcare and education. I want to congratulate those tribal chairs and council members who recently won their elections. Chairman Jamie Azure, the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians, we're glad you're back. Chairman Mark Fox, we're glad you're back. From the MHA Nation. Chairman J. Garrett Renville was just elected to Sisinwaptan Oyate. He couldn't be here today because he's being inaugurated right about now. And we also want to recognize Standing Rock Sioux Tribe Chairwoman Janet Elkire, who was not up for election this year, and as I mentioned again, Spirit Lake Nation Chairman Big Doug Yankton, who continues to dutifully serve all their constituents. I think the hardest job in North Dakota, it's not school board, it's not county commission, it's not park board, it's not state legislator, it's not governor. The hardest job in North Dakota is being a tribal chairman, because you got to deal with state, local, and the feds every single day. Let's give it up for these tribal chairs and their leaders. Across our nation, businesses, governments, schools, churches, nonprofits, every single employer in the state is struggling to hire and retain workers. And not just here, it's across our country. Our most recent report showed there was over 16,000 open and available jobs in November. We know that employers don't post all their job openings. If you got 50 nursing jobs, you might post 5. It's super conservative that the estimate of the number of jobs is at least twice as many on any given day that we have. Think of that as 32,000 jobs open in our state. That's the equivalent of more than 2 job openings for every man, woman, and child in Jamestown. These open and unfilled jobs are a reminder of our need to make good on the commitment to provide the appropriated $88 million in matching funds for private sector investment for the designated career and technical centers across our state. You already approved that. It was coming from federal dollars. They're being held up by the Treasury. But so construction can begin, even if it means advancing funds, a loan from the Bank of North Dakota until the federal funding is released. I've been assured by Senator Hoeven and others it's coming. But let's get that bill done right away, get those dollars flowing, and get these CTE centers built. We've got the financial means to make that loan, and then we'll get, when the feds come through with the dollars, we'll fill it back in. But it means that we also need to do here through this legislative body is focusing on the recommendations of the Workforce Development Council, providing $20 million for competitive regional workforce impact grants. It means investing in child care to make it easier for North Dakota's, especially young families, to participate in the workforce. It means investing in automation by expanding the successful automation tax credit, incenting industries to adopt automation with matching grants, and investing in workforce transition training and to retrain and upskill citizens pursuing new opportunities through automation. And we should double our investment in the Native American Scholarship Program, building on private sector efforts like from Hess Corporation, putting $14 million into our tribal college, and to expand employment opportunities for tribal members across North Dakota. In addition to investing in North Dakotans who already live here, we need to step up our efforts to recruit residents to our state, because even if every high school student, every college graduate from North Dakota, everyone on unemployment, which is there's very, very few left on unemployment in North Dakota, if everyone who is formerly incarcerated and coming out of our system, if all those groups, high school, college, unemployed, incarcerated, all took jobs, it wouldn't be enough to fill all the jobs we have in our state. We have to have net in-migration. And as part of that comprehensive workforce initiative, the Department of Commerce has refreshed and expanded the Find the Good Life in North Dakota campaign. It's not just ads, it's connecting individuals' leads with individual communities and individual jobs. This campaign drives those that are interested in relocating into a pipeline that connects seekers with community champions. There's many success stories out there. Go check them out. To make our state a more attractive, affordable place to live and to give an advantage to where we compete as workers, we can and should adopt the lowest flat rate income tax in the nation. The income tax relief plan proposed earlier this fall and included in our budget will eliminate the state individual income tax for 3 out of 5 taxpayers. The remaining income taxpayers will see their liability reduced by roughly 1/4 to 1/2, allowing hardworking North Dakotans to keep their money to offset expenses and invest in their families and their communities. I want again to thank Representative Hedlund, Senator Meyer, Senator Kaniainen, Representative Bosch, Representative Doctor, and Commissioner Cautious for their partnership and leadership on this proposal, which will put us on a path towards eventually zeroing out our individual income tax and joining the 8 other states that have no individual income tax and have a, right now, large recruiting advantage as we compete for workforce. Inflation and rising interest rates are eating away at family finances. Consumer prices in November were up over 7% from a year ago. Let's show working families in North Dakota that we understand their struggles by expediting this income tax relief legislation and making it again one of the first bills to be signed this session. We understand and share the concerns that have been voiced about property taxes. And in our office, and me personally, happy to sit down with anyone to discuss ways to actually reduce property taxes. I'm not talking about subsidizing local property taxes with more state transfers of dollars like we've done with 17 different bills and billions of dollars over the years. I'm talking about how do we actually understand and figure out how to reduce local property taxes. We don't want to do things that encourage local spending and grow local government. In the meantime, of course, we do have an income tax proposal that is a real reduction in taxes because it actually reduces the amount of tax revenue that government collects. This will directly and immediately help us recruit and retain workers. We also fully support the proposal coming from Senator Meyer to exempt active duty military pay from individual income tax. Military service members right now are choosing to domicile in states where they don't have to pay state income tax, including Minnesota, which affects our own North Dakota National Guard and our border communities. Let me be clear, Minnesota's got higher taxes. Military members don't pay taxes in Minnesota. We've got people that are moving to East Grand Forks and Moorhead and joining the Minnesota Guard. And we've got 300 positions open in the North Dakota Guard. So that's another one which we should just put that one right through. We've worked hard to make North Dakota the most military friendly in the state. And we did successfully include exempting military retirement pay from income tax. Let's keep that momentum going and do the same for our active duty men and women in uniform. In May of 1974, there was a shaggy-haired kid who was a senior in high school in Arthur, North Dakota. And not unlike now, he was writing his high school graduation speech at the last minute. But I pulled up that speech last night, and on that speech, much shorter than this one, I'm sure you'd be happy to hear, but there was a list of the world's problems, included inflation, it's 1974. Political scandal coming out of the Nixon years. Pollution. Overpopulation. There was an energy crisis. There's wars happening around the world. And guess what? Seemingly endless shortages. But in that speech, I also talked about the world of space-age technology. We were just coming off, it was 5 years after we'd put men on the moon. And I talked about automation. And I said that all of the problems that we were facing, that list of problems, they were all man-made, and that there could be solutions. Humans could solve those problems. And so looking back now over all these years to that short little speech, it's incredible how many all those problems that we're still facing today. But as I said then, and I still believe today, I prefer not to think of them as problems, but as challenges. And humans created those challenges, and humans can solve them. In North Dakota, we are better positioned really, truly, than probably any other state to tackle some of these persistent challenges. As we just said, they're not new. They face our nation and the world, energy, food security, global stability. But we have an opportunity here. We have a unique opportunity in our state. We are small enough where we can work together. We can grasp this moment and make a positive difference for not just our citizens in our state, but for our nation. We can be the role model of how it gets done, how people talk to each other and not about each other. Together, we have an opportunity to fulfill a powerful purpose, and that's to empower people, improve lives, and inspire success, so that in our state, every community and every citizen can reach their fullest potential. Yes, we are blessed, and yes, it's just an unbelievable time to be a North Dakotan, because we are so blessed with the abundance of natural resources, our oil, our gas, our water, our soil. But we also have something that we need to remember that isn't ever going to be constrained by a supply chain. It doesn't require billions of dollars to unlock. It's more powerful than any innovation. It's infinite and it's free. And what I'm talking about is the aspirational values that can solve any problem, can create greater understanding, and relieve the pain that so many in the world feel today. So my challenge to all of us is going forward, let us strive to employ these incredible tools that we have, the curiosity to learn from those that are different from us, the curiosity to bridge those differences, the humility, which we need now more than ever, the humility to know not only what we don't know, but the humility to admit that what we might have learned 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years ago is no longer true. And we have to have the courage to think boldly, to care deeply, live passionately, and I think most importantly, for North Dakotans who we've too often looked at ourselves and said, everybody else somehow is better than us, or someplace is better, or it's, just because it's warmer, then somehow there's something, whatever. But we've got to just let go of all of those self-constraining ideas about our state, and we need to do, as many of the people that I've introduced here today, the business leaders, the snowplow drivers, our highway patrolmen, our peer support specialists, they've all dared greatly. They've all done here in North Dakota great things, and we need to dare greatly. And we are standing on the resources right now to dare more greatly than we ever have in our history. Finally, the last one of these four, and we all know the words, the familiar words that faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. But the unlimited resource of gratitude, which is rooted in love. We're all here today because we love the state. And as we love this state and love it deeply and all fight to do the right thing for our state and our country, let us also remember to love one another as well. God bless you all. God bless the great state of North Dakota, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.